Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leon Weinstein, and I am broadcasting from the city of Los Angeles, state of California. Today, I would like to tell you a fable called Bo the Troublemaker. 10 years old Bo moved to a new school, and in the first day, he pushed the boy from a neighboring class. That is, at first, the boy pushed Bo, and then Bo pushed him. But the teacher turned around just when Bo was pushing and immediately took him to the vice principal. The vice principal called Bo's mother and told her in no uncertain terms that in their school there would be no fights and ugly, according to the vice principal, behavior. Bo cried and mom asked him what happened. He said, the boy called me fat ass and pushed me. Maybe we will call the boy and figure out who pushed whom first. Mother turned to the vice principal. What does it matter why Bo was behaving so badly? Said the vice principal. We cannot fight at school under any circumstances. He could not understand how an adult, Bo's mother, didn't understand that it was not important who started or why the brawl began. Violence, as it was proclaimed by the Ministry of Education on their island, is prohibited, and this was the point, not who started what. But what should Bo do if he is hit or offended? Asked the mother, who was born on another island. In her childhood, she had to be able to stand for herself. Whatever happens, said the vice principal, the school kids must immediately tell the teacher or me, and never under any circumstances to use force. None whatsoever. We fight against any form of violence. He proudly repeated the line from the speech of the Minister of Education, whom he adored and idolized and dreamed someday to become like him. Children were told repeatedly to complain about those who misbehaved, accustomed to complaining about those who spit, accustomed to complaining about those who swear. As soon as the student didn't like something that the other students did, he or she immediately fled to complain. Sometimes several students fled at once, and who was the first to complain received praise from teachers and even gifts from the island's Ministry of Education. There were no fights at school at all. Students going to the shift followed each other, and if anything, immediately ran from all their feet to the vice principal or to a teacher to point out the culprit of the crime committed before their eyes. And crimes, or at least complaints, did not decrease in value, but even as it were, they were added. Washed grass was once not a crime, but become a football ball hit a student passing by. The word said in his hurts about a teacher. It was immediately brought to the attention of the teachers of the school. Students stopped trusting each other. No one pushed. They didn't fight and did not disgrace and did not run. The principal and teachers constantly received the pennant calmest school on the island and cleanest school on the island. But there were no fewer denunciations. Now they concern the actions of students outside of school, even at home. The students stopped sharing with each other their experiences, dreams, desires, hopes. They feared that their secret thoughts would become known first to teachers and then to everyone else. Local hooligans knew that the students at this school didn't resist at all and calmly took away money and sandwiches from them. Bo, like others, used to run and complain about any reason, and when he became older, he began to run and complain to the police. After all, it was bad to fight yourself. You would be punished for that. But the good uncle policeman would come and punish the one who did something bad to you, who hurt you. Well, in order to punish more effectively, more forcefully, it was sometimes advantageous to leak something that didn't happen actually, but could happen. It was also nice to watch from behind the window screen as the police drove to the neighboring house and demanded, according to Bo's complaint, to either stop making noise or singing or even laughing loudly. Bo had very few friends, but his neighbors often had guests, and Bo considered this unfair. He felt offended, and he had to complain to someone for his bad moods. After the offenders were punished, or at least disturbed, Bo felt a little better. The truth is that this feel of satisfaction didn't last long. The school taught that boys and girls are the same and required all boys to come to school on Fridays in skirts and blouses. Bo first got into the closet and didn't want to go to school, but then got used to that. Boys and girls were all taught to sew, embroidery, cook, change diapers on dolls depicting their future children. If one of the boys was seen with a saber or a slingshot or even with a paper knife, then he would be kicked out of school for a week. However, the vice principal organized raids on the houses of the school children, and toy pistols, sabers, drums, military drums, and sets of tin soldiers were taken from their houses. This develops cruelty and violence in children, said the Minister of Education, and these evil objects were taken and destroyed. Some parents tried to object and even clarify something to their children, they said, but their own children began to inform on them, and most of the parents went silent. There were one or two cases of leaving the island due to disagreements with the educational methods, but others soon forgot about those who left. Interestingly, both schools had much less useful love stories than on other islands, but this was also regarded by the heads of the school and the Ministry of Education as a big plus to their methods. Fewer experiences, fewer broken hearts, and fewer unexpected and unwanted pregnancies, they said to each other, and congratulated the leadership for wisdom and foresight. Bo learned to paint his lips and blush his cheeks. In a natural science lesson, the whole class learned how to get rid of the hair on their feet. Girls had less hair, but it was not permissible to talk about the differences. In general, sexism, they were explained, was to mention any differences between girls and boys, men and women. And for this terrible misdeed, the grades for all subjects were reduced. Bo wanted to study at a good university and therefore learned to keep his mouth shut. He saw that there was a difference between girls and boys, but he already realized that the truth doesn't interest anyone. It was necessary to say what teachers wanted, and as an encouragement, teachers were writing recommendations to good schools or colleges. Students who were lucky to be born to African American or Indian parents were rather higher, given rather higher grades than whites and Asians, and Bo invented an Indian grandfather. He even bought a cheap amulet from an old man's shops and pretended to be an artifact of this great grandfather, a shaman of the mountain Falcons tribe or something. All his friends envied him. understanding that the descendant of the Indians would be admitted to any university in the archipelago without any exams. University taught Bo that any disagreement with the establishment and allowed opinion is either deception or stupidity or was done on instructions of the enemies of the homeland. All friends of the righteous regime, some called it fatherland, could have one and only one opinion. This opinion could change, but then everyone had to immediately accept the new opinion as an absolute truth. One girl who said that she could not immediately change her opinion and start believing in a new opposing views lost all friends and constantly was ridiculed by teachers. She committed suicide, but no one felt responsible. From this, Bo realized that it is necessary to change his mind and quickly, as soon as the wind blows from the other side. He liked the girl who committed suicide and for a short felt bad, but then calmed down when all the students together went to kick the teacher who had wrong opinion on politics from the university. Bo even threw a stone at his car, but missed. Bo did not develop a relationship with the opposite sex. He, as it was written in the manual on the rules of the right sex behavior, asked the girls if they wanted to meet with him for sexual intercourse, but they usually didn't agree. And if they agreed and would come to the room in the dormitory in which Bo lived with his roommate, then they left when Bo asked them for the third time if he could kiss them or if he could touch their breasts or if he could stroke them on the leg from the knee up. Bo was always, each time was surprised that they would leave. And after sudden departure of the girls, he reread the manual and asked his roommate, who was preparing for the exams in the same room at that time, what he did wrong. And every time, he made sure that he did everything in accordance with the requirements of the Ministry of Education. Once a neighbor suggested the Beau paint his lips and eyelashes, dress heels, and dance with him. Boy agreed, but when a neighbor, climbed into his underpants, he stopped and the unwanted advance and went to sleep. Next day, the roommate took to the dean's office a complaint that he no longer wants to live in the same room with Bo, since Bo is a sexist. Bo was transferred to another room and warned that if this behavior would be repeated, he would be expelled. Bo stopped inviting girls and pretended that he was completely uninterested in sex and relationship. The university continued to punish any violence other than committed by groups of students and professors against teachers with different opinion. Then everyone was handed out sticks with iron inside, gasoline, and lighters. Students attacked when there were many of them and the victim was alone. Students didn't call him a victim, they called them traitors. It was easier to scream at the lecturers and throw stones and Molotov cocktails at the windows of the buildings where the speakers spoke. When the wrong president was chosen on the island, not the one professors and students wanted, the university administration announced mooring days, equipped a calm room with quiet music and soft sofas and allowed students not to take exams. And the students went to the reassurance room and sobbed. Bo also went and cried with everyone. The offense rolled to his throat and he shook soundlessly, and for a long time then he couldn't come to his senses. Bo graduated from the university with a huge debt and found that no one needs his specialty, the struggle of women for equality in Africa. Before that, he didn't even think about how he would earn a living. Thinking about money was considered among the students a very mercantile and unpopular occupation. Those teachers who were advising to think about the future were shouted on lectures and kicked out of the universities. Bo could not pay for his housing himself and returned from the college to his parents, to their small apartment. He had no money, no friends, and he sat at home all day long, staring stupidly at the wall and hating laughing people. Bo could stand behind the curtain for hours at the window and wait for someone passing under the window and laugh. Then he immediately would pour sandwich from his night pot on the heads of people who laughed and again hid behind the curtain. This was the only thing that brought him keen pleasure and true satisfaction. When a large group of foreign workers who were used for heavy and dangerous work began to rebel, demanding increased wages and benefits, no one took to the streets to stop the mad and burning shops and cars crowd. The police, recruited from the same school in which Bo used to study, fled. Everyone hid their uniforms and mixed with the population. The insurgents, unexpectedly to themselves, seized the capital. Beat and raped all employees of the island government found themselves to be the government of the island. No one resisted. The islanders asked each other whom to turn to for protection, but didn't come up with any idea except call 911 and leave desperate messages. Quite soon, the new elite recognized that they need servants. The island services such as electric, water supply didn't work well without supervision. The islanders began to be hired again. They paid less than before and worked longer hours, but not complained. They soon learned that complaining is equal to a severe punishment. On the third day after the revolution, as the new bosses called it, Bo went to the former town hall building and proposed to inform on fellow citizens who evaded taxes, didn't want to serve new rulers, and God forbid planned something like against new government. There were many who came with the same proposition, but Bo was lucky and he was hired. The very first report Bo wrote was about the vice principal of the school he studied, then some fellow students, then some neighbors, and then Bo retaliated against anyone who laughed. One day he thought that it was inconvenient to live in a small apartment with two older people, his parents, and reported that they wanted to overthrow the new government. After some time, Bo found out that the informers were given the apartments of those they reported about and was very much upset that he didn't report someone richer than his folks. Living alone, Bo could bring home prostitutes now, and he beat them when once again he didn't have a direction. The prostitutes didn't complain about Bo, they knew where he worked and what he was doing. And one day, Bo was found stabbed in a ditch on the edge of town. No one came to his funeral and he was buried in a moat, and his grave allocated by the island was sold to someone else. End of story. Thank you for listening. Until next time.